This podcast is for general information purposes only and is not intended to create a physician-patient relationship. It is also not intended as a substitute for diagnosis, treatment, and/or advice by a qualified healthcare provider. Please promptly schedule an appointment with a qualified healthcare provider if you have a healthcare condition that has not been diagnosed or that is not under the regular care of a healthcare provider, or you're considering changes to your diet or exercise routines. Please refrain from self-diagnosis and/or self-treatment. And if you have a medical condition situation that may be urgent, then you should immediately report to the nearest emergency room.
And flat tires called jobs. But if you have a spear called determination and an engine called perseverance, with insurance called faith and the drive to make it, you'll reach a place called success.
Welcome everybody to Reach a Place Called Success. I am the host, Dr.J, and with me today is Liz Floyd. Liz Floyd is a wellness blogger. Our blog can be found on The Hive. She's a sustainable living advocate, and she's a yoga teacher, not just a yoga teacher, but she was one of my first yoga teachers here on the East Coast and has since relocated to the great state of California. And she comes to us today from the West Coast. Hi, Liz.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So happy that you are here. So we have a number of things that we want to kind of go through and talk about. But one of the things that I'd like to start with, if it's okay with you, is to kind of go back in time a little bit and understand a little bit about kind of how all of this began, how all of this started. As many people's stories start, they start with issues that they have from a health or wellness standpoint. And I think your story is similar. So walk us through what kind of issues you started with and when that was.
Yeah, absolutely. So early childhood, I was extremely healthy, always active. My mom put me in every sport imaginable, crazy schedule. I was just an athlete by nature. And I would say when I was roughly 15 years old, I started having weird symptoms. So I was a competitive swimmer at the time, and I would have extreme shoulder pain. And I thought it was part of the process of me swimming twice a day, every day. But then all of a sudden I'd have extreme migraines, fatigue. I started getting depression symptoms. And during that time, being a 15-year-old, you're wondering, is it hormonal? Is it being overworked? Which is why I kept pushing through it. So I kept, for a while, I was just wondering, like, is this normal? Is it not? I'd have rashes. I would wake up to the point where I wouldn't be able to lift up my arms because I was in so much chronic pain. So after, going to a few doctors, my GP at the time, he was like, nothing's wrong with you. I think you're just being overworked. You're probably stressed. And, my poor mother was, looking at me and she's like, this is not normal, and I grew up in New Jersey but early childhood, I lived in California. And so kind of going back to that, my neighbor of mine was having similar symptoms, and she reached out to my mom and was like, have you ever gotten her tested for Lyme disease? So, we went and got tested and it came back negative. And I'm like, great, I don't know what's going on. I'm just going in circles here, going to different doctor's appointments, physical therapy. It got to the point where there are certain days I couldn't get out of bed. My teammates were, questioning whether I was just faking it. And that was so embarrassing. And having no one.
That's got to make you feel good, right?
Oh my God, being a 15-year-old and one day feeling like you have the flu and arthritis and the next day feeling fine, you look crazy. And it was really demoralizing at the time, especially being a teenager at that ripe young age. So our neighbor, she recommended that we go to her Lyme literate doctor who did an array of tests on me. And I, was lucky to find out that I did, in fact, have Lyme disease, an array of co-infections. And I still had no idea what that meant. I'm like, I thought Lyme disease was from a tick. And my mom looked back and she was like, I remember when we were living in California, I plucked a little tick off of you. And she's like, I threw it out the window. We were in the car. We were hanging out in the Highlands one day having a picnic. And, I saw a tick, pulled it off, didn't think anything of it. Later found out that I had an extreme chronic case of Lyme by the time I was 15. So it kind of came on and hit me like a ton of bricks at that point in my life. So I stuck to a very extreme protocol when I was 15, 16 years old. It was about 2 years long that it took to really feel a difference in my health. We experimented with everything from going on and off of antibiotics, completely changed my diet, cut out gluten, dairy, sugars, just did a complete life change. And I was used to eating a normal diet. I was a teen. I ate junk food. I ate like a million times a day because we were swimming so much. And, it was a tough time for me to adjust to this lifestyle, but eventually it started to work. I put in a solid
how long before you started to actually be like, this is actually starting to work. I'm starting to turn a corner here. How long did that take?
So it was about a year of extreme dedication. My poor mother putting me through all this and making sure I stuck to my protocols. But I remember I was going into my junior year of high school, excuse me. And that's the year where you get recruited for swimming. I wanted to swim competitively in college. And I remember thinking like, gosh, I am just so screwed. I can't get out of bed. I'm really struggling, but I'm just going to keep pushing through this and stick to it and have faith. And by the time of the college recruiting, which is around July, I miraculously just started feeling like my best self. I got my best, recruiting times. That was the best year I've ever competed in my entire life.
Wow.
And, and that's when I really had faith, like, wow, changing my lifestyle. And I really think it was cutting out specific things that were causing inflammation and inhibiting my healing process. That to me was something that just, it clicked. And from then on, I'm like, I want to live as clean as possible because I never thought I could ever feel this good.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
so
it's tough.
Talk me through a little bit about the specifics of the diet. Go into a little bit more detail, if you don't mind, about what you did at that time. Also, what you said you went on antibiotics. You said too.
I did a few rounds of antibiotics.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was rough. But when I first got my test back, so this Lyme literate doctor, she did like a stool test, urine test. So she did everything with the gut, which was new to me. I'm like, why are you worried about my stomach and what I'm eating? How is this affecting it? Me being, the 15-year-old that I am, knowing everything.
Right. You didn't know that all the antibiotics you're taking are just crushing you, and it's going to take a long time for you to rebuild everything.
Exactly. Wow. So she was like, well, we're going to get you on a really good probiotic, and we're also going to cut out gluten, dairy. I found I had leaky gut. I had no idea what that was. We went on the leaky gut protocol, just completely cut out extra sugars. So I was pretty much sticking to lean meat, no cheese, no bread, which every swimmer loves eating bagels after practice. So that sucked.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but it was just staying hydrated, supplementing correctly. But all the dairy, I found that eggs didn't work for me, so I had to cut out eggs. We did a full blood and stool test that really identified what things worked for me at the time. But it was a lot of trial and error. So, but I was extremely strict with my diet for that year because I had no other choice.
What did everybody kind of give you guidance regarding meats and fish and things like that?
Oh yeah, so she, my doctor, I'm not going to name her, she wants to be private for this, but she was talking about how, the connection of glyphosate and leaky gut, and she was like, if you're going to eat meat, you have to eat organic, pasture-raised meat, good quality meat if you're going to eat any at all. She didn't recommend me eating a ton of meat, but when I did, make sure it's extremely high quality when you can. So I was very diligent, or my mother, I should say, about filling our fridge with fresh fresh meat and fish. So we ate a ton of salmon. I ate salmon, gosh, a few nights a week, along with lean turkey, chicken, and because I was anemic at the time too, and I had some issues, with the types of foods I needed to eat in order for my body to heal. So at first I was wondering, do I need to go vegan? Like, is that the easiest route for me? And she's like, no, you need to eat meat. That's what's going to help you heal and stay strong, especially as a competitive swimmer.
Right. Yeah, the fish is a little bit of a slippery slope. You read a lot about, mercury and the heavy metal toxins that are involved in the fish industry, in particular in farm-raised fish versus, wild-caught fish. So I was curious as far as, do you continue this diet the way that it was at that time from a successful standpoint, or how has that changed over time?
I've learned a lot. I say that it's been pretty much the same, except I'm a little more lenient at times too. I do drink alcohol on occasion, which was something I didn't do when I was 15, but in regards,
or at least you told your mom that you're not doing it.
You're correct. Sorry, Mom. But I will say, though, when it comes to the fish, she made it very clear, heavy metals were a big part of my protocol, limiting my exposure and limiting that, internal toxic load. So I was taking chlorella and other binders to help kind of pull and detox them out. So even to this day, when I eat fish or something that I know is considered pretty heavy metal toxic, I'll make sure to really take my binders to at least limit those effects or help pull it out if I can. But to answer your other question, I'd say I stick to pretty much the same diet, and I find that whenever I kind of go off the wagon, like this weekend I was visiting my parents and, I didn't worry about what I ate, I'm a guest at someone's home. But now that I'm back home in San Diego, I'm like, all right, I'm back to my diet. I want to feel good. And once you know what works for you and makes you feel so good, you don't want to go branch too far away from that, at least from my experience.
Yeah, I agree. But you hit the nail on the head, too. You go to visit your parents. You're going on a vacation. You're going, out to dinner at a nice place. You're doing all this hard work to maintain your health. It's not going to affect you dramatically by being able to, do X, Y, or Z off of your normal diet,
Exactly. You don't want to drive yourself crazy. Half of the healing process for me and what I've realized is that, you can stick to all the supplements, the diet, you can stick to your protocol. But if you don't have that, at least 30% of you that's actually happy and enjoying yourself and loving life, you're not going to heal. And if you have to take that, that dinner out and, eat whatever you want and feel good, do what makes you feel good. If that's going to make you happy for now, go ahead and do it. I found that was a big part of my balance when it came to healing, was trying to find that good balance between treating myself and feeling good, yet sticking to what makes my body feel good and loving my body in that way.
Yeah, that's very well said. That's very important. Now, you talked a little bit about, obviously, your exercise at that time and your nutrition. What was going on from a mental state? Was it really affecting you? Were you able to persevere pretty well because you were young? Like, how did that affect you from a mental health standpoint?
I would say if I was sick with Lyme right now, I would not be able to bounce back like I did when I was 15. So being at that age and finding it, I am extremely, extremely lucky. A lot of people aren't. I was swimming 2 to 3 times a day. I was also on my high school team that swam too. So I was driving from practice to another practice to school to a meet to practice some days. So it was tough. And then when finally my doctor was like, you need, I had a port and I had to do IV antibiotics for a point of my healing process. And God, I had to go to my coach and tell him I need to not swim 3 times a day. And I am blessed that I had a coach who was a hard ass, I will say. He was like, all right, whatever's going to make you heal, like, I will support you. So I cut back during the peak training part of our season, we would swim about 10,000 yards of practice, and we would do that 3 times a day. And I cut back to just maybe doing half of one practice. So it was embarrassing because I had my whole team looking at me saying, like, why does she get to, like, you know, slack off this year, or why is he favoring her? And I just didn't have the time or energy to explain to anybody.
Right.
But, you know, it was tough at the time, but looking back, I am so grateful I did, because it allowed my body to heal. You know, giving it adequate rest, but still finding a little bit of movement was something that was extremely beneficial to my healing.
Very cool. All right, so let's jump ahead now. Now you are getting in the experience world of blogging about wellness. Is it thehive.health?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Very cool blogs, articles. I was reading those over the last week. Everybody should definitely take a look at that stuff. Why don't you give a little bit of a background of what you've covered thus far and what your interests are moving forward on the blog?
Yes. So it kind of all started because I studied digital marketing in college. And I love writing and I love design. I've worked at agencies, you know, a few different ones since graduating. And, you know, after experimenting with all of this weird, quote unquote, weird healing hippy dippy stuff, I have a lot of friends ask me, like, what worked for you? What do you recommend? Granted, I am no doctor. I'm not a medical professional. But I wanted to create a space that I can share how I navigated my own healing journey, and to maybe help those figure out what works for their unique body. So I decided to create a blog. So it's called The Hive. I have a thing for bees. I love them. I think they're one of the most valuable creatures on this planet. And, you know, I decided to write about non-toxic living because lowering my toxic burden was something that really helped me heal from Lyme and other co-infections that I had. So writing about my resources, what works for me, types of foods that, you know, are healthy for practically anybody. Just writing about little tidbits of my life that people have asked over time. And I thought I would just create a hub where I can share it and where people can, you know, comment or share their own experiences. So right now I talk about a lot of healthy home stuff. Now that I've created a home here in San Diego, so living a non-toxic lifestyle at home, products that I love and use, especially products that I've switched over to clean versions of. That's extremely important because there's a lot of things out there that we use on a daily basis that can be creating long-term health effects.
Right.
And the goal of the blog is to just share resources. You know, I want to talk more about the types of clean foods that I've been eating or have adapted to eating, how to live a balanced lifestyle, and how to find that balance within your own life. I also want to share different resources on how I found what works for me, what certain blood tests to take if you're interested in finding out what foods work for you, different detox protocols that pretty much anybody can utilize to help limit that toxic load in their life. But also another important thing too is that, you know, I'm not planning on having kids anytime soon, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't be detoxing right now and really focusing on my health preconception wise. So the goal is to talk to different doctors about preconception healthcare, detox protocols, healthy living in general for people my age or maybe a little older or younger. Yeah. So the goal is to get more interviews on there. We have a few in the lineup right now. Hopefully one with you, Dr.J. And yeah.
Absolutely. So if you categorize things as far as what your interests are, what people ask you the most about, some of the products that you support are kind of, it look like detox, gut, and skin. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of like the 3 kind of categories that you would say?
I would say so too. So I'd say a lot of detox, like a clean home, healthy home.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of food articles are about to be up there. And I'd say clean beauty has been kind of one where I've gotten a ton of questions about. And I realized, hey, you know, we should write more articles about certain products that can really be beneficial or items to swap out to live a healthier life.
Very cool. Good.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite, what is your go-to for, let's start with the detox. What exactly is in that box or that packet that
Yeah, we have, there's a few articles up there on that. I like to talk about a bunch of random things that I've tried in the past, but a lot of friends and followers have asked, like, I want to do a detox. What do I do? And I wanted to say that, you can do one quote unquote detox with food and whatever, but it's more of a lifestyle than a one time thing.
Okay.
So, but I will say, when if it comes to like, I want to do a cleanse, I want to feel good. I have an article about fasting that's up there about a program that I love to do. I also talk about, other elimination diets, something that's cheap and easy and that you can do on your own to detox. In that detox category too, I talk about how to detox your home. What products are the most toxic in your life right now? Things that you may not think are, whether it's deodorant or your household cleaning products. I think that taking the toxins out of your life will enable space for you to heal, whether you know it and feel it or not. That's the main thing,
Yeah, that's an important point, because a lot of the times we're hyper focused on what we should be bringing in, right, from a health standpoint, but there's also this whole idea of what you should be avoiding that is actually giving you harm. And we don't have a lot of awareness regarding that. So that's kind of a cool thing.
As a lot of preventative is something that I probably don't hone in on enough, but it's about preventing rather than reversing the effects down the line. If I could go back to my 8-year-old, 9-year-old self, I would be eating the cleanest foods. I would be trying to tell my mom to get things out of the house, but I mean, that's impossible to go back in time. But for now, before I start a family of my own, I want to develop these healthy, clean habits so that, it's something that my kids down the line can, take on themselves. But the preventative thing is the most important part of this blog. It's about preventing rather than rewinding and having to detox.
And you use the term critical thinking, which is a really interesting way. I didn't know exactly what you meant by that until engaging in this discussion to understand that principle.
Absolutely. So I think that we live in an era where in all aspects, across all boards, we have stopped using critical thinking. When it comes to your health specifically, you can go on Instagram and you could find 10 different diets out there that may work for a male that is a different heritage than you, that comes from a different background, different internal microbiome. But what he does for his unique body is probably not going to work for yours. So how can you use critical thinking and say, all right, how is this food product, whatever it may be, going to affect my unique body? And I think in order to answer that question, you have to really take the time to get to know yourself. Whether it may be figuring out what foods work for you, doing a few simple tests to see what supplements you need to be taking. You could be taking a pill that someone else recommends that is probably not doing anything for you. Or maybe your gut is not in good shape to actually absorb it. Everybody is so unbelievably unique that it's just, no two people can be on the same protocol. So I think that it's important to use critical thinking when it comes to the foods you eat, the supplements you take, your lifestyle, and your activity levels. I think it's just, everybody's just so different. It's impossible for two people to be on the same diet and same lifestyle and feel extremely healthy.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, so the goal, another goal of the blog is to share tools to figure out how can I figure out what works for my unique body. And I think that's extremely important because it's taking me years to figure out, but I'm extremely happy I did because now I know what makes me feel good and bad.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things too that I'm finding more and more I'm discussing with my individuals that I have on the podcast is this idea and principle of gut health. We talked about it early on with your situation when you were taking the antibiotics and what you needed to do to, and you didn't even know what you were doing, but you were kind of getting that gut back from a health standpoint. And some of the supplements that you recommend are they probiotics, prebiotics? What do they have along in that category?
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer it all starts and ends with the gut. Anything going on, they call it the second brain. I think it's more important than the brain itself. So I will say I do work with a few different companies as affiliates, but I've actually taken their products for years prior to having this business arrangement with them. One of them being Ion Biome. It was previously called Restore. It's by Dr.J. He is phenomenal. Highly recommend going to check him out. He is just all things microbiome, talking about the soil and how it correlates to your internal microbiome. So the product that he has, it's a little squirt bottle of this liquid. It doesn't taste like anything, but what it does is it helps create the foundation for your microbiome to flourish. So I take that. I've been taking that every single day for the past maybe 10 years. And it has completely changed the way that I absorb food. I firmly believe it. That's one of the products that I love, and there's literally no side effects, which is one of the only reasons why it's one of the very few products I actually recommend to friends and followers. Another one would be a solid probiotic, and by far the best one I've ever taken is Seed. The company has done extensive research on how to actually get this probiotic down to the gut without having it, demolished before it even gets there. It is one of the best companies to be associated with, in my opinion. I love the research that they've been doing, but having a probiotic every day and just really feeding the gut with the right bacteria, especially diversifying it, has been really helpful with how everything else in my body has reacted to the foods and supplements I've been taking. So if you don't have a good foundation with the gut, nothing's going to work for you, no matter what foods or supplements you take.
I agree. Absolutely. And now, as far as the skincare is concerned, a lot of people will look at the approach of trying to have skincare products that are environmentally friendly or non-toxic and be like, well, that means that they probably won't work. So this is your platform to be able to kind of dispel that myth and kind of give your reasoning behind what you use and how well they work.
Yeah, I experiment all the time with different skincare products, but I will have to say my skin has gotten better from hydration and fixing my gut. First and foremost, I think internal beauty and focusing on your gut will fix any skin issues that you have.
That's a huge, very important point. I agree with that. Step 1 and 2.
I think just staying hydrated, feeding your gut with the right bacteria, or creating the foundation will fix any skin issue that you have. I used to have hormonal, horrible acne, and by the time I was 17, all gone by fixing my gut. But I will say that I've experimented with tons of different beauty brands because I wanted to find something that was low in heavy metals. So, and I did my research. All the makeup I was using had either phthalates, they had parabens, and those were the things that were showing up in my heavy metal toxicity, like mercury, aluminum. So those were inhibiting me from healing. So I was trying to find different products, deodorants, perfumes that didn't inhibit my healing and detox process. So I've experimented with a ton of different brands, and there's an array of clean beauty products out there and brands that work better than the makeup I've used, the conventional ones that I've used in the past that were considered toxic. A great resource for that is Credo Beauty. I got invited to one of their summits earlier this year prior to COVID in San Francisco, and I was sitting in on some of their panels, and they do a very, very in-depth research on every company that they work with. making sure that there's no chemicals in there that will cause any long-term effects, whether they're still considered safe or not by our, CDC standards. But, there's an array of products out there that work, if not better. They work really well for me. And I'd love to share companies that are doing good things, whether it's they use sustainable packaging or which directly affects, the way that our whole environment is, to, non-toxic, no heavy metals, no phthalates, nothing that can cause any long-term effects. Because what may be safe right now, or what may be considered safe, and why things are still seen on the shelves, they have very low levels of heavy metals and other potentially toxic chemicals, and they're still deemed safe, which is insane. Yet down the line, these things bioaccumulate in your body. So whether it may not be affecting you right now, there's a good chance that it could be building up in your body and cause a pretty nasty effect down the line. You can Google parabens and phthalates, and it's still considered safe in very low levels in certain products. Yet they're found in breast tissue, cancer cells. So, while it still may be considered safe, why do I even want to put that in my body? So there's a big debate on whether, you should be listening to your dermatologist or trust a company because, it's still deemed safe, but use your critical thinking. Do you really want to put this in your body and have this build up down the line? Think of the things that you use every single day, what you use the most. For females, it's skincare and makeup, and that's my personal experience. So if I can limit my exposure to these potentially harmful chemicals, why wouldn't I? And it's nice because I got my boyfriend switching all of his products too, because he started using his critical thinking as well and was like, all right, well, if I could find something just as good and it's within the same price range of what I've been buying, why the hell wouldn't I switch over? So I like to share.
Well, you got to let me know then too, what you give your boyfriend.
Oh yeah.
I'll use whatever you recommend for sure.
He's gonna write a few articles for me too. So he's been, we traveled together this past week, and he whipped a few together. And I think the male audience that comes to the website will really appreciate what he has to say.
Well, like I said, it's the largest organ in the body, so you got to take care of your skin.
It is, and meanwhile, there's a lot of research done on what actually gets absorbed or not within your bloodstream or your body. But, if there's any question to it, whether it could or could not, I don't want anything to do with it. So yeah. I want to make sure that, while there's still not enough research out there, I'm avoiding it. I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole if it could potentially harm me or my hormones or my future kids.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So, with the podcast, I also have a section towards the end here where I always want to know the person behind the message. And, I would say at least 50% of today's podcast, though, is actually you divulging, what, your life experiences were. But, today, let's talk about that. Are you, from an exercise standpoint, are you still swimming? Are you still yoga? What do you do from an exercise standpoint on a day-to-day basis?
It's a tricky question given the whole COVID situation, but my approach to working out has changed drastically. So I am not swimming 3 times a day anymore. Once I competed in college,
I didn't want to assume, but I had to ask.
Oh, I know, but I do still swim on the occasion. Unfortunately, I joined a gym right before COVID, and they had a beautiful pool, and I picked up swimming again, and I loved it. I really do think it's one of the best workouts you can do, other than the fact you're bathing yourself in chlorine every day. But I cut back from teaching yoga, but I've been taking classes, and it's been amazing. But the main thing that has changed within my workout schedule is finding what works with my busy schedule. And for me, that doesn't mean I need to work out an hour a day and lift and do cardio and just completely kill myself. What works for me is doing a few times a day, now that I'm working from home, doing, 20 minutes of yoga. maybe another 15 minutes of like a quick Pilates, doing things that are low impact for me. My joints are not as limber as what they used to be back when I was 15. So doing body weight has been a huge help for me.
So I was just reviewing how we've covered now exercise. You've obviously discussed your nutritional component. The last question is always about the mind-body connection. What do you do for mental health these days? Is it you find everything you need out of yoga? Do you meditate? What else is part of your recipe?
I think yoga is one of the most phenomenal tools to build that mind-body connection and awareness. Yoga will forever be a staple in my routine, whether it's a 15-minute practice or me going to my studio and doing a 75-minute hot flow. Something that's always a staple when it comes to my mental health, any type of movement. But more than anything, I found that meditation and what I like to call micro meditations have been phenomenal for my mental health. I will say with my ADD, I am not the type to sit down for 20 minutes to a half hour and try to meditate. My mind wanders, and it's, as you know, for those who meditate, it's a never-ending process of just trying to bring yourself back to the present. So, but for me in my busy schedule, I find personally that just sitting for 3 minutes, closing your eyes, focusing on your breath, can do just as much as you would sitting for a half hour. So finding moments of your day where you are conscious, and or maybe it's even an active meditation of when I wash my face at night, closing my eyes, really feeling it, taking time to take care of myself and love myself, as simple as washing a face. That can do so much for your mental health. I find self-care practices something that keep me sane. Whether it's me taking a cold bath in the morning, that's a form of meditation for myself. 8 minutes in a cold tub has been doing more for my mental resilience than anything else during these days. Self-care, really loving my body. And I think more important than ever, taking time off your phone, getting away from social media, spending time with your family, being with people that can give you good affirmations and show you love. That has been so unbelievably important to my mental health, and just stepping away from the screen. There's this notion that we need to make big gestures in order to really feel or see something, a change within ourselves. But I really think that these little micro movements that we can do, micro meditations, 15 minutes of working out, even if it's as simple as washing your face and closing your eyes and be like, I love myself right now. Right. As silly as that may sound, that can do more than really carving out a chunk of time that you may not have or may not be productive for you and thinking that's going to fix everything.
Yep.
The little things throughout the day are what really keep me sane and grounded. But more important than ever, just stepping away from my phone at night has done me in my sleep so much.
Yeah, I did a podcast, a 4-part series with Claire Estee McDonald, who is an Ayurvedic specialist, and she talks about body brushing, like all of these different things that you do for yourself to help keep you grounded. And I mean, all of the things that you just said, you just add those things in too. It's kind of that process, what allows you comfort. Take your time and get grounded by brushing your teeth or whatever it is you find as an individual, the things that can help your mind and your body.
Exactly.
The other thing that I have to say is that, it comes out. Your messaging comes out how you not only believe in this approach, but you're having great success and you have a love for it and a passion. And that's kind of what is intoxicating. That is what is most attractive to, have you on at this podcast. So I really appreciate, you and your spirit and your energy coming on.
Thank you so much. No, I can talk to a wall about how much I love.
Well, I mean, we don't have to
self-care.
stop, but the bottom line is that we got to leave something on the table for a future podcast with you.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I'd like to do.
Absolutely. I'm in.
The other thing, though, is I want to make sure that although we're obviously here on Instagram, people know how to reach out to you that way. Touch base again about how to reach you, maybe email or through the blog, thehive.health, so people are aware. Otherwise, do you have an email or a website? Like, what other ways would you like people to reach out to you?
Absolutely. So you can connect with me, of course, through Instagram. My handle is Liz Floyd, and you can reach out to me at connect@thehive.health. There's also a contact form on the website. I'm going to be doing a newsletter soon that just talks about, probably once a month, that talks about different articles that I've written about or leaves room for questions. So if there's anything that you'd like to see, whether it's about Lyme or healthy living, non-toxic home, beauty, whatever it may be, please don't hesitate to reach out, because like you said, I love sharing and connecting with like-minded individuals who are interested in this as well.
Awesome. And as I said in the beginning, but was not part of the podcast, this was an Instagram Live that we're recording for the podcast. And during the Instagram Live, people may or may not be aware that people can ask questions along the way. And after the fact, we will review those, and we'll get back to you as far as answers are concerned, either on Instagram or direct messaging or whatever way we need to. So I appreciate your time so much. Thank you so much for being part of Reach a Place Called Success.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. J. It's a pleasure speaking with you as always. And
There's a curve called failure,
bye.
a loop called confusion, speed bumps called friends, and red lights called enemies, caution signs called family, and flat tires called jobs. But if you have a spear called determination, and an engine called perseverance, with insurance called faith, and the drive to make it, you'll reach a place called success. Can you hear me? Now I have to get to you them.